Have you ever wondered if giants once walked the earth? Not just myths, not just legends, but real beings so extraordinary that they defy everything we know about human history. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious topics in biblical and ancient history, the Nephilim. These enigmatic beings are briefly mentioned in the Bible, yet their story has fascinated scholars, theologians, and researchers for centuries. Who were they? How did they come about? And could there really be evidence that they existed? The word Nephilim appears in the book of Genesis and is often translated as giants or fallen ones. Genesis 6:1-4 tells us that the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves. The offspring of this union were the Nephilim, beings described as mighty, powerful, and extraordinary in stature. But the Bible is only the beginning. Ancient texts, archaeological discoveries, and even skeletal findings suggest these beings may not have been mere legend. In this video, we'll explore 5 pieces of evidence that suggest the Nephilim were real. We'll look at historical records, archaeological discoveries, and ancient texts, examining each claim critically and thoughtfully. By the end, you'll see why the story of the Nephilim has endured for thousands of years, and why it continues to captivate imaginations worldwide. Before we dive into the evidence, it's important to understand the context. The Nephilim are often described as hybrids, offspring of divine or angelic beings and humans. The Bible itself mentions their presence before the Great Flood, and even after, references to giant beings appear in Numbers 13:33, where Israelite spies report seeing giants in the land of Canaan. This hints that the Nephilim, or at least beings of extraordinary stature, were present throughout history. Ancient extra-biblical texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees expand on this story, describing how Watchers, a group of angels, descended to earth, took human wives, and produced offspring with incredible strength and size. These texts describe Nephilim as causing chaos, teaching forbidden knowledge, and influencing early human civilizations. Could these accounts be exaggerated myth? Or is there something more tangible behind these stories? Let's begin by examining the first piece of evidence. One of the most intriguing forms of evidence comes from archaeology, specifically skeletal remains that suggest humans of extraordinary size once existed. Around the world, reports of giant skeletons over 7 to 10 feet tall have emerged from locations including the United States, the Middle East, and Europe. While many of these reports are dismissed as hoaxes or misinterpretations, some credible findings have been documented in scholarly studies and historical records. For instance, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists in North America uncovered skeletal remains of unusually tall humans in areas such as Ohio and Kentucky. In 1895, the Smithsonian Institution reportedly examined giant skeletons found in the Ohio River Valley, some measuring over 8 feet tall. While some records have been lost or suppressed, these early accounts were documented by researchers such as Dr. Squire and Davis, who wrote extensively about ancient mound builders and unusually large skeletal finds in the 19th century. Across the globe, similar findings were reported. In the Middle East, reports from early 20th century archaeologists uncovered skeletal remains in ancient burial sites that far exceeded the average height of humans in the region. Scholars like Sir Leonard Woolley, famous for his work in modern-day Iraq, documented unusually large bones in his excavation reports, although he often refrained from labeling them as giants publicly due to skepticism from the academic community. Skeptics argue that many of these discoveries are either exaggerated, misreported, or destroyed over time. However, when we cross-reference these skeletal reports with ancient texts describing giants, the consistency is striking. Could these remains represent Nephilim, or at the very least a group of extraordinary humans that inspired the stories of giants in the Bible and beyond? This first piece of evidence sets the stage. Archaeology alone cannot fully prove the existence of Nephilim, but it provides a tangible, physical link to the stories preserved in ancient texts. Our second piece of evidence comes from ancient texts, both biblical and extra-biblical, which describe the Nephilim in remarkable detail. While the Bible gives us glimpses, texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees provide a much fuller picture. The Book of Enoch, which dates back to at least the 3rd century BCE, expands on the brief Genesis account. It tells the story of the Watchers, angels sent to earth who became enamored with human women. These unions produced offspring described as giants, Nephilim, who were extraordinary in strength and often violent. Enoch's text even goes so far as to describe how these beings corrupted the earth, teaching humans forbidden knowledge, including metalworking, astrology, and sorcery. Similarly, the Book of Jubilees, a Jewish text from around the 2nd century BCE, refers to these beings as giants who brought violence upon the earth. Jubilees links their existence to a period of moral decay, which culminated in the Great Flood. These accounts consistently describe Nephilim as both physically imposing and morally disruptive, suggesting they left a lasting mark on early human society. What makes these texts compelling as evidence is their consistency across different sources and cultures. Multiple independent accounts describe the same phenomena: giant, powerful beings with mysterious origins who influenced humanity. Scholars like R. Charles and E. Isaac have studied these texts extensively, noting that while some details are allegorical, the persistent descriptions of extraordinary human-like beings cannot be ignored. So, while skeletal remains provide physical evidence, these ancient texts offer historical testimony. Together, they create a picture of beings whose reality is difficult to dismiss entirely. Evidence number 3: megalithic structures and advanced ancient engineering. The third piece of evidence comes from an intriguing intersection of archaeology and architecture. Massive, ancient structures, whose construction seems to defy what we know of early human technology. Some theorists propose that these monuments were built with the help of beings of extraordinary strength and intelligence, possibly the Nephilim. Consider the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Scholars like Dr. Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass have meticulously studied these structures, marveling at the precision and sheer weight of the stones used. Each limestone block weighed several tons, and yet ancient workers achieved perfect alignment and placement without modern machinery. While conventional archaeology attributes this to highly organized labor and ingenuity, fringe researchers suggest that such feats may have been facilitated by beings of extraordinary size and strength. Other examples include the megalithic walls of Baalbek in Lebanon, where some stones weigh over 1,000 tons. How could humans in antiquity move and position these stones with the technology supposedly available at the time? Some researchers, including Ivan T. Sanderson, have argued that the Nephilim or similar beings could explain these feats. Even beyond the Middle East, structures like Stonehenge in England or the massive terraces of Sacsayhuaman in Peru raise questions about ancient engineering capabilities. The presence of these enormous constructions worldwide raises the possibility that extraordinary beings, known in some traditions as giants or Nephilim, may have assisted early civilizations. While mainstream archaeology attributes these achievements to human ingenuity, the consistent legends of giants or divine helpers across multiple cultures suggest that these stories may not be entirely symbolic. Could the Nephilim have left behind more than just myths, perhaps a physical legacy in the form of monumental architecture? The fourth piece of evidence comes from more recent reports of giant skeletal remains around the world. While many accounts are controversial and debated, some have been documented by credible researchers and historical records, making them worth examining. In the early 20th century, Dr. Alice Hrdlicka, a prominent physical anthropologist, documented skeletal anomalies in North and South America, including unusually tall human remains. Reports from Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee in the United States describe skeletons measuring between 7 and 9 feet in length. Newspapers of the time, as well as local historians, reported these finds, though many of the skeletons were later lost or confiscated. Similarly, in South America, skeletal remains discovered in Peru and Chile occasionally reached over 8 feet in height. Archaeologists studying ancient burial sites in these regions, such as Dr. Julio C. Tello, founder of Peruvian archaeology, noted unusually large human bones, though they were often dismissed as anomalies or the result of exaggerated reporting. Even in Europe, some burial mounds from the Bronze Age contain remains of individuals far taller than the average population at the time. While some skeptics attribute these findings to genetic variation or pathological conditions, the sheer number and geographic spread of these unusually tall skeletons suggest something extraordinary may have occurred in ancient times. When we consider the biblical and extra-biblical accounts alongside these skeletal discoveries, a pattern emerges. Multiple independent sources, ancient texts, historical accounts, and physical remains point toward the possibility that beings of extraordinary stature, like the Nephilim, did indeed exist. Our fifth and final piece of evidence combines genetics, folklore, and myth. Some researchers theorize that Nephilim were hybrids, offspring of humans and divine beings. While modern science cannot confirm the existence of angelic human hybrids, anomalies in ancient DNA and the persistence of giant myths across cultures are intriguing. Consider legends from around the world: Greek titans, Norse Jotun, Native American tales of enormous beings, and African stories of primordial giants. These myths consistently describe beings of extraordinary size, strength, and sometimes supernatural abilities. Anthropologists like Dr. Joseph Campbell have argued that recurring themes across diverse cultures often reflect shared historical experiences, which could include encounters with unusually large humans or hybrids. On the genetic front, some studies have noted unusual DNA markers in ancient remains that do not fit neatly into known human lineages. While these findings are not conclusive proof of hybridization, they raise questions about ancient human diversity and the possibility of unique lineages that might have inspired stories of Nephilim. Taken together, the combination of ancient texts, skeletal evidence, monumental structures, and myths across civilizations suggests a world where beings of extraordinary size and power could have existed. The Nephilim, whether literal giants, hybrids, or symbolic representations, remain one of history's most compelling mysteries. So, there you have it. 5 pieces of evidence that suggest the Nephilim were real. Archaeological skeletons of giants, biblical and extra-biblical texts describing their existence, megalithic structures that may indicate extraordinary strength, modern and historical discoveries of unusually tall skeletal remains, genetic anomalies, and cross-cultural myths hinting at hybrid beings. While skeptics will always demand more concrete proof, the convergence of these different lines of evidence paints a fascinating picture. Whether you see them as literal giants, hybrids, or symbolic figures, the Nephilim continue to inspire awe, curiosity, and a sense of wonder about the mysteries of our past. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe the Nephilim walked among us, or are they simply stories passed down through generations? Either way, their story reminds us that the line between myth and history is often thinner than we think.